Welcome to John Martin Talks, where we battle ignorance and apathy daily. The growing ignorance of just how special this experiment we call the United States of America is, and the apathy that we can't or won't do anything and everything to save her. Well, ladies and gentlemen, my first story comes to you from ABC News, and it is, of course, going viral, making the rounds because President Trump said something controversial. So we'll get right to it. The headline, I think I'd take it. In the exclusive interview, Trump says he would listen if foreigners offered dirt on opponents. Asked by ABC News chief anchor George Stephanopoulos, who was a Clinton guy, by the way, in the Oval Office on Wednesday whether his campaign, talking about Trump's campaign, would accept such information from foreigners such as China or Russia or hand it over to the FBI, Trump said, I think maybe you do both. So before we get into actually breaking down what the president said, I got a question right off the bat. Why is he granting, President Trump, why is he granting such access to George Stephanopoulos? I mean, if you saw the video, you can Google it, check it out. But remember, Google is of the devil. I'm just saying. Stephanopoulos is like, he's a short little old guy, and he's standing over the president sitting at the Oval Office at the desk. I guess what's it called, the Resolute desk? Anyway, the desk that in the Oval Office. And it's like he's looking down on the president. It's just a bad optic. I know the president wants to be fair and balanced, so to speak. But I think sometimes he goes out of his way, just my opinion, to try to appease the mainstream leftist media, and I just don't think it works for him. That's one of I have a few criticisms of the president, and this is probably right at the top of my list. I don't know why he does this, but I don't see how it helps him in any way. But hey, he's a smart man. I'm not saying I'm right. It's just my opinionated fact, I think. But hey, I'd like to get your opinion on that. What do you think about that? Chime in on like Citizens for Trump or Deplorable Resistance or my Facebook page. If you haven't gone there directly, it's John Martin Talks Facebook. Like it, share it with others. I put memes and articles that I don't have anywhere else. Of course, we have a pretty broad spectrum now of Facebook sites that we're broadcasting on. If you'd like to join that, just contact me and we'll see if we can't make that happen. But I'd ask you, my listeners out there, what do you think? Do you think this is smart of the president to have people like George Stephanopoulos giving him such great access? I don't. But back to the story. Foreign sources. I like how they use this word, foreign sources. Now, I'm not saying this what I'm about to say justifies the president in any way. It's just a fact. You know, look at his opponent, Hillary Clinton, from the last election. She not only took money, campaign money from foreign sources, including her time as Secretary of State through the Clinton Foundation. I mean, the Clinton Foundation was basically laundering hundreds of millions of dollars from Russia alone. You don't think they were trying to buy influence? I mean, give me a break. But the Clintons, they've been awash in foreign money for years. Hillary Clinton even had fundraisers overseas. So, you know, I mean, like I say, I'm not saying this justifies what the president does or said. All of that, I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon. Because one thing they have in common, and the president kind of points this out in the article, that both sides of the aisle have in common is they're not opposed to taking money, no matter where it comes from. But President Trump said, I think you might want to listen, talking about if some foreign entity was giving you campaign dirt, so to speak. There isn't anything wrong with listening. If somebody called from a country, and Norway, yeah, like Norway is like the den of secrets, I suppose. Norway and said, we have information on your opponent. Oh, I think I'd want to hear it. Now, do I like this? No, I don't. I don't really like this whole idea. But when you consider what the president has had to live with, fake PP dossiers, FBI investigations, otherwise known as witch hunt, the insurance policy that Stroke and Struck Page and all put out there, which I call the Mueller report. I mean, when you look at the overall spectrum, if you will, of what President Trump has had to go through, you can hardly blame him to say, well, what is the point of your question? Trump disputed the idea that if a foreign government provided information on a political opponent, it would be considered interference in our election process. Interference. Well, see, I actually think interference would be more like vote tampering. But of course, the Democrats aren't opposed to that, right? They're not opposed to allowing illegals to vote. They are opposed to any measure. This is what I would ask George Stephanopoulos, because he falls in this category. Why, if you're so worried about the election process, are you so adamantly opposed to anything that would shore it up, that would like voter ID? I mean, you got to have an ID basically to exist in this country, but you don't have to have it for voting, or at least you do in some places. But the Democrats, the progressive left, and the mainstream media, if you try to shore up the election process in any way, they call you racist and everything but a child of God. So, I don't know. This tampering process, I think, is overblown when it comes to foreign sources. And it's hard to listen to you guys when you don't want to accept things that would actually shore up what we know is going on. Anyway, we'll keep you posted on this. I think they're making much ado about nothing, really. But, of course, the media does that quite often. We're going to move on to another story coming to you from Politico. Billy Bob says, let's move on. If you haven't met my psychic sidekick, Billy Bob Bass, he's quiet on the set here, but he keeps me straight. He keeps me focused. He has a Twitter handle, by the way. It's at Billy Bob Bass 1. Mine is at John Martin Talks. But this comes to you from Politico. Warren, talking about Elizabeth Warren, leapfrogged Sanders in a pair of 2020 polls. So you may remember that Joe Biden, basically, even before he got into the campaign, but certainly since he officially got into the campaign, he's been leading across the board on polls. And Sanders has been a distant but strong, I guess you would say, compared to others, second place. Now Elizabeth Warren, in a couple of polls that have just recently come out, has leapfrogged over the Bern master. She hasn't caught up on Biden, although his lead overall has slipped, but it's significant to find out who is in. Elizabeth Warren leapfrogged ahead of Bernie Sanders into second place in a pair of Democratic presidential primary polls released Wednesday. Well, bless her heart for that. I mean, she's been through a lot. I mean, she's still learning how to drink a beer live on TV. She really doesn't know who she is or where she came from. And everything that she's kind of believed in appears to be a lie. She had to cheat on her entrance exams to various institutions. I mean, I feel, bless her heart, she's getting a little bit of something, a little love somewhere. But Warren has overtaken Sanders nationally, according to a new Economist YouGov poll, which puts the Massachusetts senator ahead of her Vermont counterpart, 16% to 12%. Former Vice President Joe Biden still leads all contenders with 26%. But the real question now with Warren rising in the polls, and this goes back to a story we covered yesterday. Want to check out our podcast? All you got to do is go to John Martin Talks Facebook page, where we have all of our shows archived there. Check it, like it, share it with others. I'd appreciate it. But we did a story yesterday on the choice between Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders that poor little Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is going to have to make. Now, it looks like she's leaning towards Elizabeth Warren, but we never know. But could this push her over the top if Elizabeth Warren gets the coveted AOC endorsement? We will keep you posted. Biden leads the first Monmouth poll, name of the poll, of likely Democratic caucus goers in Nevada with 36% support, followed by Warren at 19% and Sanders at 13%. Wonder what the Vegas odds have on old creepy Uncle Joe. I wonder if they have him like grabbing it, snatching the nomination from behind. Patrick Murray, director of the independent Monmouth University Polling Institute, said Nevada's highly unionized service sector workforce may be a good fit for Warren's policy platform when you look at the Democratic electorates in the 4 early states. But he goes on to say, however, she is nowhere, talking about Elizabeth Warren, near the top tier in terms of candidate preferences among Latino and black voters who make up a significant part of the party's base. So I guess what he's saying is the whitest woman in America, maybe on the planet, known as Elizabeth Warren, because remember, she produced documents, she produced paperwork, she paid for her own DNA sample to prove just how white she truly is. So this issues with people of color. Imagine that. Warren began laying out her vision of economic patriotism earlier this month with a plan for a $2 trillion investment of federal funds over 10 years in green research, manufacturing, and exporting. $2 trillion investment over 10 years. Now, let me just give you a little, if you don't get anything else out of the show, and this goes across the aisle, and it even applies to President Trump, and I'm sure he said similar things. But let me just give you a little piece of advice here based on experience. Anybody who is running for president specifically, and anybody who actually is running for re-election, and I'd say this of Donald Trump for president, and tells you they have a 10-year plan, is, guess what? Feeding you, as President Trump would say, ridiculous BS. Because a president, no matter how great they are, can only serve 2 terms, 8 years. So they're gonna say, oh, the plan that I have, in 2 years after I'm out of office, it'll be really good. I mean, that's a lot like Obama's economy, right? Obama had a 10-year plan for the economy, and I guess because 2 years after he's out of office is when it's finally starting to work, man. So I just tell you right now, if anybody running for president tells you they have a 10-year plan, just hold up the sign saying, bullshit, because it's what it truly is, man. She touted, got back to Warren, she touted several other plans during her MSNBC town hall last week. Of course, she famously said, I'm not going on Fox News. She may be rethinking that as other people's numbers go up. But she touted several other plans during an MSNBC town hall last week, including protecting access to abortion, anti-corruption policy to rein in lobbying for major companies. I like how she combined that, anti-abortion stuff with lobbyists and curtailing lobbyists. How about the lobbyists called Planned Parenthood? Didn't they just announce within the last couple of weeks that they are forming a new group to lobby against any kind of restrictions on abortion? And they're using your money, taxpayer money, regardless of what they say. They got over $500 million in funding from you to taxpayers. So they're taking your taxpayer money, and yes, they spend it on abortion. It's nonsense to think that they don't. Ridiculous accounting nonsense. And then they're going to lobby with it. So why isn't Elizabeth Warren speaking out against these people who are taking your money, not private money, but your money to lobby against you potentially? I don't expect her to speak out on that at all. But talking back to Elizabeth Warren, she also ranks at the top as voters' second choice, though the margin between Warren, Sanders, Biden, and California Senator Kamala Harris, what happened to Kamala? She must be she's got to be looking for a couch to lay on, because she got to be going crazy. But she's within 2 percentage points as their second choice, I suppose. So Liz, second choice, she tops the list. Does that mean she's a great VP candidate? I don't know. So I guess they better not offer it to her, because did you see the news? It came out, I think, yesterday or the day before. Kind of all runs together. But Stacey Abrams, who says she's really the governor of Georgia, she talked about somebody being a little bit delusional, but she says she's really the governor of Georgia. She was asked the other day about Biden basically saying that if he wins the nomination, that he'll pick her as his VP candidate. And now this is a person who admits that she owes hundreds of thousands of dollars in student loans and is basically unemployed at the moment. She said for her to be considered VP by Biden is racist and sexist. So I don't know, man. If Liz, does she consider that? I mean, Would you consider it racist or sexist if the person leading in the and they were considering you for vice president if they win? I don't know, man. Anyway, so Elizabeth Warren is topping Bernie Sanders. So what is Bernie Sanders' response to that? Well, I'm glad you asked, because our next article goes right to it, and it appears that Bernie is using his time in the sun, so to speak, to double down on him being the best socialist communist out there. This is also from Politico. As I remind you, if you just tune in to me, I often read articles and look at television shows as a public service, so you don't have to. And I do that from Politico. Sanders goes full FDR. Bernie Sanders argued Wednesday that the United States is at a moment as urgent as the one it found itself during the 1930s. Now that's a very interesting time period to choose to compare to, because socialism was not that popular at that moment. Authoritarianism and oligarchy are on the march across the world, he said, and the best way to defeat them is with the emphatic break from mainstream politics of either party. Authoritarianism across the world. Isn't that socialism, Bernie? Aren't you saying that socialism is the world right now? I mean, by your own definition, it sounds to me like that. But he goes on here, in a major campaign speech designed to counter critics of his democratic socialist ideology, the Vermont senator proposed a 21st century economic bill of rights that would ensure the right to a decent job, health care, affordable housing, higher education, secure retirement, and a clean environment. In other words, free stuff. But I thought about this paragraph, man, and how it relates to socialism. First, he says here that it would ensure the right to a decent job. Well, let's look at like Venezuela. As you know, they're like the poster child for socialism, right? They got no jobs. I mean, Bernie's favorite place where he honeymoons in Russia, they don't have jobs either, man. They're going broke. And as far as healthcare, you're talking about in socialist countries, people are eating out of dumpsters, man. And you think that they're worried about healthcare? They probably should, but they're probably worried about how fresh is this crap in the dumpster, man. They got to pick the best dumpster. And he talks about higher education. Well, correct me if I'm wrong, but anybody higher educated or not, but certainly higher educated people, aren't they getting the hell out of Venezuela and socialist countries as quick as they possibly can? And then he talks about retirement, a secure retirement. Well, I guess one way to have a secure retirement is just not live that long. I mean, people are losing. There's a great diet plan in Venezuela. Eat out of dumpsters and you'll lose like 25, 30 pounds in a year. That's the average weight loss of the Venezuelan people. And I say that with no joy, man. I hope that Venezuela can be turned around. I don't think it is anytime soon. But a short retirement, if you just starve to death, you don't have to worry about retirement, I suppose. You don't even get to live up to getting your discount when you're 60, I suppose. And then he talks about a clean environment. Well, go back to Venezuela again. A clean environment, man. They're running out of water in a rainforest. Only socialists can run out of water and gas, for that matter, in the middle of the largest reserves there is. But only socialists can run out of water in a rainforest. But if you look at talk about a clean environment, if you look at any of the major cities in the United States, pretty much all of them are run by Democrats. And how are they faring, especially when it comes to a clean environment? I mean, give me a break, man. But Sanders, whose family members were killed in the Holocaust, I don't make any light of that, also reminded his audience members that tens of thousands of Nazis gathered in 1939, not in Berlin, not in Rome, but in Madison Square Garden. And he's right about that. We have a lot of Nazi sympathizers back in those days. Now, there are actually very few, but back then there were. In front of a 30-foot tall banner in Madison Square Garden of George Washington bordered with swastikas. But Bernie, this is where I'm confused, okay? I'm sympathetic to Jews and family and members and friends and whatever. Jewish people certainly did not fare well, to say the least, under under socialism. Nazis, by the way, is National Socialistic. That's what it stands for. But aren't you anti-Israel, sir? I mean, the one place where Jewish people have found that they can at least attempt to be safe and secure their own destiny, so to speak, is Israel. But you're one of the most anti-Israel congressmen, or in this case, senator, out there. I mean, I don't get that. I never have gotten that. And I never have, for just as a side note, I can't understand why any Jewish American, or anyone that, for that matter, that cares about the Jewish people, especially the state of Israel, would ever vote Democratic. But obviously they do. Bernie went on to say, we rejected the ideology of Mussolini and Hitler. No, you hadn't. You've embraced it from what I can see. We instead embraced the bold and visionary leadership of President Franklin Delano Roosevelt. But Bernie, wasn't FDR opposed to government unions? All in favor of labor unions, but adamantly opposed to government unions, which you, sir, have embraced wholeheartedly, including like the teachers union and everything else. But FDR was opposed to that. And one of FDR's longest lasting legacies, if you will, is the Social Security Administration. And you, sir, Bernie, and your friends on both sides of the aisle, I'm not going to let anyone escape this, have been draining and using the Social Security system like it was your own private piggy bank for decades. And you've been right in the middle of that. So I don't know how much FDR you're really channeling here. Not by actual action, maybe in words, but words, you know, they don't compare to action. I'm concerned about your words and your actions. Sanders drew a line between the Nazis who gathered in New York City, a connective line, in 1939 to the neo-Nazis who marched in Charlottesville in 2017. Of course he did. He has to. Democrats got to keep hate alive, man. You talk about, keep hope alive. They keep hate alive. The Democratic Party would disintegrate without hate, because the Democratic Party strategy, and I can tell you this as someone who's been there and watched the sausage made, one of the reasons why I left the Democratic Party is because they break people up into what I call disparate groups. In other words, groups that might not get along with each other, get them all pissed off, and then unify them behind some common hatred of a common boogeyman. In this case, he's like the perfect villain for them. At the same time, Bernie, he tied himself to Roosevelt. One of the biggest applause lines came when he recalled a well-known campaign speech that Roosevelt delivered in 1936. So they're talking about moving us forward while they're looking backward, right? Sanders repeated Roosevelt's famous words that he had to struggle against class antagonism. So I guess between different classes, socioeconomic. But Bernie, hadn't you gotten rich? I mean, filthy, multi-millionaire. And I don't begrudge you that, but hadn't you got rich, sir, without ever holding a real job? Only members of Congress, by the way, can seem to do that. Can make millions without ever holding a real job. Think about that. Bernie has had a lifetime of public service. So I would be ventured to say that the dude has never made, I'm sure it's senator, what do they make? About a couple $100,000 a year, something like that. But a lot of his career, he was just mayor of a small town in Vermont and everything else. So his salary, if you look at the total amount of money he's made over his lifetime from salary, taking government paychecks, and compare that to what his net worth is right now, I mean, wow. And you could do that with a bunch of them on both sides of the aisle, by the way. But Bernie, you have certainly gotten rich without ever holding a real job. That, sir, is magic indeed. And then he says sectionalism. I'm not sure what they mean by that, other than the fact that you divide us up, divide and conquer. Of course, we know that people you worship like Barack Obama, we're talking about sectionalism, he wasn't even talking about Trump voters, although they became Trump voters, like in Pennsylvania, where he said they're just clinging to their Bibles and their guns. Of course, Bernie wants to do away with that. Take away your guns and probably your Bibles. They might let you keep your Bibles if you just give up your guns. But then war profiteering he mentions. Now that, sir, is an issue I could agree with you on, because I agree with our former Supreme General and President Dwight Eisenhower. the whole military-industrial complex that he warned us about. If you haven't ever checked out President Eisenhower's basically farewell speech and his warning, you should, because it has certainly come to pass, and it was becoming to pass during FDR towards the end of his administration. So, Bernie, I'm with you on this war profiteering, but there's one small little problem. Even though you call yourself an independent, you've been caucusing with the Democrats, and of course you're running as a Democrat, right? Your party, sir, and this is right now, your party, the Democratic Party, that used to be the anti-war party, has now, I guess, suffering from Trump derangement syndrome, has become the party of perpetual war. There is no place that the Democratic Party doesn't want to expand our military. And they're supported by some Republicans. I don't get it, but that's the fact. And Bernie goes on to say, never before in all our history have these forces been so united against one candidate as they stand today. They're unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred. Well, Bernie is a perfect communist, because what I call the perfect communist is when you can look people in the eye and basically tell them, say, do what I say, but not what I does. You know, you have to be a communist leader, you have to be willing to look at people starving and waiting in bread lines and say, hey, don't pay attention to my Deutsche over here, my estate, or the millions I've made on the book deal, by the way, Bernie, but pay all your money in taxes. And remember in the town hall in Fox when he was asked, and he looked like a deer in the headlights, well, why don't you pay the taxes on this book deal you've made that you're advocating everybody else pay? And he was like, So he's a perfect communist. Do as I say, not what I does. And now he's becoming the perfect little Democrat. Because like I said, the Democrats thrive on hatred. So Bernie is saying, yeah, give me your hatred. Because he wants the hatred. The Democratic Party without hatred would disintegrate. So Bernie, you've been the perfect communist for a while, and congratulations to you. You are becoming the perfect Democrat. And maybe you'll overcome Elizabeth Warren and Joe Biden. Who knows? This next story is also a little bit connected to the Democratic Party. It comes to you from the UK Express, and my little subtitle to it is Gaia not aligned with the Democratic Party. Because, you know, the planet, I mean, the Democrats are all about 10 years, 12 years, depending on where you listen to Beto or Ocasio-Cortez, where we got 10 or 12. We ain't got long, let's put it that way. But the planet ain't down with that, apparently. This comes from you, the UK Express. The ocean, is it rising? Well, no. According to the UK Express here and some scientific study, the ocean is sinking. Oceans are being consumed by Earth as dead supercontinent found. The oceans are in a perpetual state of flux, no joke, with water flowing in and out of the Earth's mantle. In other words, the water goes down through, it comes back out. The process known as the deep water cycles sees water slip under the planet's tectonic plates only to come out later through underwater volcanoes and vents. So this has probably been going on, you know, like Leonard Skinner says, there's things going on that you don't know. I mean, I remember when the volcano recently erupted within the last couple of years, it still is, by the way, in Hawaii. I loved it when the news correspondents came out there, like CNN people, and their lava's flowing there. This lasts for weeks. Guess what? Mother, they tired of fake. Maybe Gaia's tired of fake news as well. About 70% of the Earth's surface is covered in water, and 97% of that water, more than 332,519,000 cubic miles of it, is found in the ocean. So most of the water is in the oceans. No big surprise there. But the deep water process appears to be swallowing up more water than it is releasing back to the surface. Say it ain't so. The sea levels could be dropping. I thought they were supposed to be rising up to the point that the sea levels may in fact be dropping. I don't know. So I guess the Democratic Party, they're probably meeting right now and just scrambling. We got to quit. We got to change the message. We got to change the message, because they can change the message in a hurry and get on board. I mean, think if you hear one Democratic leader say something and the rest of them just parrot it, man, they must have some kind of talking point express. But they got to change the message because the sea levels may be dropping. And if some scientific estimates are to be believed, there could be about 3 to 4 times ocean's worth of water are trapped under the mantle. So, hey, Kevin Costner, you may have a chance here. Waterworld 2. Who knows? But, the Earth has a, I don't worry about the planet. I worry about our survivability on the planet. But the planet's been here a day or two longer than we have, I think. The shocking revelation was presented by a team of geologists from Norway and the journal Geochemistry, Geophysics, and Geosystem. Norway? Is that one of them foreign sources of information? We're getting information from foreign sources. The researchers found historical evidence of sea levels fluctuating by more than 6 feet alongside so-called supercontinental cycles every 300 to 500 million years. So the ocean has cycled 665 feet over 300 to 500 million years. Wonder how that figures into Beto's 10-year plan or Ocasio-Cortez's 12-year plan. I don't know. I'm going to bet on the planet over their plans. These drastic shifts in oceanic heights were determined by the volume of the ocean, which itself is determined by the movement of the continents. The continents are moving around, the ocean is moving around. But don't you pick up a straw, man, or it could be the end of the world as we know it. If you're using a straw right now, drop it and take 3 steps back. You could be causing a cataclysmic situation. But let me just tell you, if all this is true, if true, as the Democrats say, then man, we need the Trumpster more than ever, because only President Trump could actually, since he's like the destroyer of worlds, couldn't he not at least move the continents or stop them or get them back together? Because apparently since the continents have broken apart, it's causing us, it could be the end of the world. I don't know. At one event in particular, they're talking about this continental breakup, may have contributed to a significant flux in the deep water cycle, the breakup of Pangaea supercontinent. So when all the continents were together, and you can look at it, they look like puzzles. It doesn't take much to figure out they were together. I've always believed that. But Pangaea broke up. Now, that was only about 100 years ago? No, I think it was a while back. But I thought about this, man. Maybe these New World Order people got it right after all. Maybe we need to reform Pangaea. Maybe we need to start a movement instead of worrying about borders, language, and culture and all that kind of stuff. If we just could push the continents back together into one big world continent, then all would be well. So maybe if they get all these jackasses that they should be riding around the country, the jackass party, the Democratic Party, and get to pulling on it together, maybe we could keep hope alive. I don't know, man. But hey, there's always hope. Well, this next article comes to you also from Politico. I'm on a Politico kick today. And my little subtitle is Channeling Bob Dylan. Everybody must get stoned. Because this says California inmates can legally possess marijuana after Proposition 64, court says. California inmates can now legally possess less than 1 ounce of cannabis in prison, on the prison grounds, in the wake of Proposition 64, it's the legalization of recreational marijuana, a state appeals court ruled on Tuesday. Now, so now they're saying that prison inmates can have pot in prison. Nothing could go wrong with that. Oh, but they can't smoke it. We'll get into that in a minute. The Sacramento-based 3rd District Court of Appeals overturned the 2017 convictions of 5 Sacramento men who were found with marijuana in their cells. Well, of course it did. It's California after all, And are they taxing it, by the way? Progressive. Now, this next paragraph is progressive logic at its finest, man. This is coming from a judge. I mean, you think that sharpest tools in the box become judges? Not necessarily, unless this guy's just way more enlightened than me. But in his opinion, presiding Justice Vance W. Ray wrote that California Penal Code criminalized the smoking or ingestion of cannabis in prison, but it doesn't address possession. What? I mean, think of it. Let me read. So, I am not making this up. The judge's opinion said that the California Code criminalizes the smoking or ingestion of cannabis in prison. So you can't smoke it, you can't eat it, have it. For 2016, they legalized the possession of cannabis for all Californians, including those in prison, according to the court. So, wow. I mean, this is hard. Maybe my stoner days, because I've smoked a little bit of pot in my day, and it's been a while. It's been over 30 years, and I'm not going to do like President Clinton. Hey, I inhaled and it damn near killed me. I'm not judging you. I'm just saying, for me, drugs and alcohol just don't work. Imagine how goofy I'd be on that. People saying, yeah, look at that. He's a fat hillbilly, I was called by one listener the other day, and yeah, fat, man, maybe I got the munchies from time to time, leftover pot residue after 30 years. Hillbilly, I'm from a state that basically has no hills, but I'll accept hillbilly as well. But let me just ask you this. So now that they're ruling that prisoners in California, how long before they say you got to pay for it, you California taxpayers out there? How long before they turn around and say it's a God-given right? Like a right to health care. You absolutely need to pay for prisoners to have pot. That is your obligation. Paid for by ganja. Surely Kamala Harris is for that, right? Department of Justice attorneys argued that the penal code can be interpreted to include possession as a felony, and that allowing possession will put an extra burden on prison staff. But judges dismissed that argument. So the Department of DOJ in California is appeal this, saying, having pot in prison could cause some problems, but the judge dismissed all that. It kind of reminds me of a Seinfeld episode about Bizarro World, because it seems like everything is opposite the way it's supposed to. Maybe California has literally become Bizarro land. Prisons still have the ability to regulate cannabis possession, so they can regulate the possession. Just like with cigarettes, alcohol, but inmates will no longer have time added to their sentences if caught. So they can regulate alcohol and cigarettes and cannabis, but they ain't going to add any more time to it. So that's a deterrent what? Now, what could go wrong with that? What could go wrong with this idea that they can have alcohol, they can have booze, alcohol, they can have dope, they can have cigarettes, all this stuff? Nothing. I don't see anything. Said California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation spokesman Vicki Waters, she under review. We want to prohibited. So you can have it, you just can't sell it or use it, right? So I've just had kind of an awakening on this. Maybe I'm looking at this all wrong, because they're saying you can have pot, you just can't eat it or smoke it or sell it, but you can have it. Well, I'm thinking back to my days of drug addiction. I told you, man, I've been clean and sober for over 30 years now. And I worked at Alcohol and Drug Abuse Center, treatment center for like 15 years. So I might know just a itty bitty about this. And let me just tell you, if you're addicted to drugs, I can't think of a worse punishment than having it all before you, but you can't touch it, you can't smoke it, you can't eat it. I mean, maybe that is the ultimate punishment. Maybe they're on to something. You talk about cruel and unusual punishment, someone's going to sue on that, because in order to put pot in front of people in prison and then say, you can look, but you just can't touch. I mean, wow, maybe they're on to something. Maybe there's some logic to this liberalism in general. But CDR, California Department of Corrections, is committed to providing a safe, this is Ms. Waters again, providing a safe, accountable environment for prisoners and staff alike, and we plan to evaluate this decision with an eye towards maintaining health and security within our institutions. So you can have prison health, we talked about this yesterday, street health, but tax-paying citizens, what about your health? Well, you know, keeping along with the drug analogy, you just need to be mushrooms. I don't know about psychedelic mushrooms, but if I said it, and it bears repeating, the people, and this is especially true out in California, for taxpayers, it really goes across the nation. What the political parties, really of both sides of the aisle, want you to be is mushrooms. They want to keep you in the dark and feed you bullshit, and you just write the check. So if you really think how much of a mushroom you got to be to think that, oh, this is going to be great. We just have pot in the prisons. They can't touch it. They can't eat it. They can't smoke it. They can just look at it. They can't sell it. And that's going to cause no problems. And by the way, you're going to pay for it. I mean, wow. David Lynch with the Sacramento County Public Defender's Office, who worked on behalf of the plaintiffs, these 5 men that you know, wanted to smoke. Well, I don't know if they want to smoke. They just wanted to look at it, I guess. Lauded the decision and said it will prevent inmates from having years added to their sentence for simple possession, reducing overcrowding, and saving $50,000 to $75,000 a year in unnecessary costs. Well, I'm thinking about something that Jerry Brown, the old moonbeam Jerry Brown, former governor of California, said a couple years ago when they were talking about legalizing marijuana. He was actually opposed to it. I think he was getting money from medical marijuana people. But, you know, he said, I don't know if we can operate or have. But apparently California, maybe that's how you live with poop on the street, needles sticking out of it, you know, typhus fleas on you and everything else. Just everybody must get stoned. So, you know, if they keep going this way, this is what I propose. You've heard me say build the wall, better for us all. Well, when we build that wall, let's just include California. But we'll give you a little time to escape from there, and people are escaping in droves from California. But if you do escape California, please do flag, and I like your "Don't Tread on Me" flag. Bring those flags because they'll have no meaning there. But above all else, don't bring any of that liberal politics with you to Texas, Florida, Arizona, places like that. Leave that crap in the trap that is California. So anyway, I hope you've enjoyed the show today as much as I've enjoyed bringing it to you. And, you know, if you're having a hard time dealing with it, just get stoned and check it out or whatever. Oh, don't do that. Just put it in front of you and torture yourself saying, I will not eat or I will not smoke it. But anyway, as I say, I hope you've enjoyed the show today so much. Thank people like Citizens for Trump. Deplorable.